So welcome to this Bone Matters session on gadgets and equipment for daily living. Today's session is all about the types of equipment that may help someone who has had one or more broken bones, which are also known as fractures, caused by their osteoporosis. Now, that might be things to help them with certain tasks temporarily whilst a bone is healing, or things that make mobility or daily living a little easier for people who've had fractures that have long-term effects on how mobile or comfortable they are. It's important to say, of course, many people with osteoporosis will not have fractures. And even for many of those people who do break bones, they will heal well and they will have no need for any kind of aids or equipment at all. So today I'm delighted to be joined by two experts in this area. I've got Jack, who's an occupational therapist, or OT, as you might hear them called, who is a rheumatology clinical specialist in Oxford, and Philipa Russell, who's a volunteer for the charity and has a great deal of personal experience to share with us. So welcome to you both. Thank you very much for joining us. Jackie, can I ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role?
Yeah, so my name's Jackie and I'm the rheumatology occupational therapist. I'm based, and I work with patients mainly with rheumatoid arthritis, but I also cover the orthopaedic side of occupational therapy in Oxford. So that's working with patients who's had joints either sort of repaired or replaced. So that is my remit, really, is the occupational therapy and rheumatology and orthopaedics.
Okay, that's great. And Philipa, could you introduce yourself and perhaps share a little brief outline of your story and your work with the charity?
Well, I'm Philipa Russell. I've been involved with the charity for a long time, and it's been a great help to me. I'm quite an expert on fractures because I've had about half a dozen. So I shall be talking about dealing with pain, for example, and the kind of gadgets I've had used, or the things I've used, both temporarily when I've had a fracture which is completely healed, and permanently when I've had a fracture that hasn't completely healed. So that's what I shall be telling you about. And you could hardly call them gadgets when I tell you one of them is a cot duvet.
Right, okay. We'll get on to that later then. So talking of gadgets, that's led us nicely into Jackie. Perhaps you could give us a basic idea of the types of aids and equipment and gadgets and not that are available to help people who might be struggling with, say, certain tasks after having had a fracture.
Yeah, I mean, as occupational therapists, we're very interested in how people manage all the daily activities in what they do. So quite often we always, we start off with the question, what sorts of things are you finding difficult at the moment? So we ask them, is it actually getting yourself washed and dressed? Is it getting in and out of the shower? Is it, making a meal? Going out in the car? So we would always ask, our patients or clients, what sorts of things are you actually finding difficult? And say, for example, they say, well, actually, I'm managing most things, but the biggest thing I struggle with is getting the lower limbs, getting dressed in the morning. Quite often people might have more morning stiffness. And then we think, how can we look at this and make it just that much more easier and safer to manage? And that could be something really simple, like a sock aid. You thread your socks onto it. You're able to put your socks on independently. It might be a grabber or a reacher, something that just allows you just to have that little bit more stretch. It could be, I feel a bit unsafe getting in and out of the bath and having a shower. So we think, is something like a grab rail, a slip mat, a seat. It doesn't have to be big pieces of equipment. It doesn't have to be used for very long. It might be variable. You might need to use it one day and not the next. So everything people do on a daily activities, occupational therapists are really interested in. How are you managing your daily tasks? What sorts of things are you having difficulty with? And let's have a think of, is there something out there that can just make this a little bit easier or a little bit safer for you?
Absolutely. And do you usually find there is a solution? Is there usually something that does that task for people?
Absolutely. I think,
Yeah.
when you actually sort of look at what they're explaining, quite often when you sit down together and have a think about it, there's normally something that can make that task easier or safer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. One thing we get a lot of questions about from people, particularly people who've had spinal fractures, is being in the kitchen and standing at a worktop, standing at that sort of slightly bent position for any length of time, and they really struggle with that. Is there anything in that sort of area that people might find helpful?
When you sort of think about your kitchen activities, quite often something as simple as a perching stool is really effective if people have got the space to use a perching stool. And a perching stool differs from a normal stool. It actually puts you in what we call a functional position. So it's on a little bit of a slant. You bring it up to the work surface, and it allows you to be able to be sort of semi-sitting, semi-standing, and then you can do your washing up, do your vegetable preparation, sit and have a cup of tea. And it just allows you not to be standing there for a long time thinking this is causing me a bit of discomfort or pain. So generally, I would say a perching stool in the kitchen, certainly for fatigue, is something that people find really effective.
Yeah, that sounds good. Another thing we often get people asking about, again, with I think both spinal fractures and hip fractures, it might be a combination or a variety of things, but is getting up and down from chairs, getting in and out of beds. Again, sometimes that might be temporary whilst they're recovering from a fracture. Sometimes it might be longer term if somebody's had multiple fractures. But are there any sort of recommendations in that area?
Yeah, and I think that quite often people don't realise how low their sofas are or their beds are until something's happened and they actually think, I am finding this more difficult. And it could be something as simple as putting some raisers on your bed or on your sofa. It could be putting a raise on the toilet. It could be looking at maybe changing your mattress or putting a mattress topper on there. It doesn't have to be big adaptations, just to give you that little bit more height. Generally, the higher things are, the easier it is to stand up from.
So some quite simple changes then, really, potentially, instead of, sometimes people think they might have to go out and buy a all singing or dancing bed that will lift them up and lay them down. And, that's not necessarily always going to be the case, is it?
No, absolutely not.
Brilliant. That's great. Another question we get asked a lot about is mobility and people who are having problems with just the simple moving around and needing mobility aids. And again, might be temporary, might be a longer term thing. What would happen there? Is that something that would come under the occupational therapy team, or would that be something you would have to see a physiotherapist about?
Certainly in our services here, generally the physiotherapists prescribe the mobility aids, whether that's crutches or sticks or a wheeled frame. But we would always sort of be, working alongside the physios. So if someone is given, for example, a frame to help mobilise for a little while, then the occupational therapist would think, well, okay, if you're now mobilising with your frame, how are you now managing your daily tasks with that? So we're very much hand in glove, and the physiotherapists and the occupational therapists very much complement each other. So, they might be prescribing the mobility aid, and then we would be looking at, okay, now you're using that mobility aid, how are you going to be managing to do your daily tasks with it?
Yeah.
And it could be something as simple as giving somebody what we call a caddy that sits on top of their frame, and that then just allows them to be able to carry their newspaper or cup of tea or something. So it doesn't, again, have to be anything particularly complicated to make a task so much more easier.
Brilliant. Yeah. And how about going out? Travel seems to be an issue that causes quite a lot of, I think, fear for a lot of people as well, with not only the going out and being worried about being on unsteady surfaces and those sorts of things, but the physical aspects of maybe getting in and out of a car perhaps, and sitting in a car on bumpy journeys, or any of those sorts of practical problems that people might have with travel. Are there any suggestions that OTs might deal with there?
I mean, we certainly look at sort of how people access the cars quite often. Yeah. And it can vary so much from, if you ask somebody, well, what sort of car are you getting into?
Exactly.
Whether it's a low sports car or a big, four-wheeled drive, and it could be, just repositioning the seats, so it's a little bit further back. Maybe looking at a technique where you go bottom in first, and then you push your bottom back towards the sort of handbrake, and then you bring your legs in gently. And it's, so we certainly, going out is so important. And when people go out, they want to be able to enjoy that, not sort of think, oh dear, I'm going to have to struggle to get in and out of a car. But so we would certainly look at sort of making that as easy as possible.
Yeah. And good to know, again, there's some basic options. It's not that they've got to suddenly go out and change their car itself. There might be some really useful ways of just making a slight change.
Yeah. Or just being taught a slightly different technique.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people might need bigger changes. Some people might perhaps need to adapt a bathroom possibly, or something like that. Is that something the OTs would get involved with there in terms of guidance on what to do and what's available?
Yeah, occupational therapists are in a wide range of settings, and we have occupational therapists in what we call adult health and social care. So they're out in the community, and they are more specialised in sort of housing adaptations. So if somebody did say, actually, I think what I need is to have a bathroom adapted, or have some advice about having a bathroom adapted, even before they make any sort of decisions, referrals to the occupational therapists in the community who are specialised in those housing adaptations are a great place to start, because they can come out, they can look at what you've got and think, well, actually, a slight change here, or a grab rail or a seat, might allow you to do it before you have to think of the big adaptations. Or if they say, no, actually, I think it is worthwhile looking at a more major adaptation, they're the ones who give all the specialist advice. So they're sort of giving you the information. You can then do what we call an informed choice of anything that you have done.
So that comes on really nicely to my next question, actually. It's if somebody thinks, actually, I do need some help with something, I am struggling, and they're at home, they're not necessarily a hospital inpatient, being able to access services like yours, how would they then go about that? Who do they contact to ask?
There's community therapy services that's got occupational therapists and physiotherapists as part of that service, and there's the adult health and social care. So they're all community-based therapists looking at supporting people at home. So they would be your best placed people to make the referrals to.
So would that be presumably through the GP as a starting point?
Here in Oxford, adult health and social care, you can have it done through a professional, the GP, your occupational therapist maybe that you've got to know in the hospital, or you can do self-referrals. So it all goes into the same team. It doesn't have to be done in Oxford by a health professional.
Okay. So for people around the country, it's probably a good idea to maybe check with the GP practice as to how they might go about that in their area, and they'll be able to tell them what to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it
Brilliant.
might, yeah, your GP is the best place to tell you how it works in your area.
Yeah. And of course, as far as I understand it, if people out there do need something, it's not always the case that they have to pay for it. Lots of people will be able to go through an assessment to find out what they might be able to get given to them. It's not always necessarily something they have to fund by themselves, is it?
No, if it's a smaller adaptation, it might come that they don't have to pay for it. But your best place is to have those referrals done, have those assessments done, and then you're just informed and you can make the decision then.
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. So coming on to you, Philippa, then, having talked through those few items there, have you needed to use any kind of equipment because of your fractures that you've had?
Oh, indeed. And my advice will be to accept all the help that's on offer. My husband and I, between us, have had a lot of gadgets from the occupational therapists and social services, I think, such as lots of grab rails. Neither of us can walk independently, so we'll have a small house, which is an advantage because there's usually some furniture to grab onto, but both of us have walking frames. He has a Zimmer frame with one of those caddies on the top that he can take a cup of tea on, and I have a trolley with 2 levels that I can lay the table with and take things through to the other room. So that's useful. We also have high-low seats. Both of us need those. Oh goodness, we've got all sorts of things around the house that have been supplied by the occupational therapists. And a key safe, which Age UK is very good. They provided that. Yes, we have made. Oh, and of course the odd walking stick. And when I broke my elbow, instead of my trolley, I had to walk one-handed because I need my arm to go on my trolley, and so I had a stick with 3 prongs. And it's a bit unsafe, but it was, with caution, I could use that instead of my trolley. So we're very grateful to what's been supplied.
That's good. And is there anything out of the things that you've been offered that you've particularly valued, or perhaps really just not found useful at all?
Well, I would say about walking frames that you take outside. I was supplied. I fractured my hip. It never healed properly, and so the thigh basically has been damaged. There's no muscle of any use in one thigh, so I always have to walk on something. I was supplied with a Delta frame which has 3 wheels, and that in the hospital floor is absolutely fine. But when you get outside on the pavement, you come across camber, and if you lean on it quite heavily, which I have to, it can tip. It's not safe. So I bought myself a 4-wheeled one, which also has a seat on it and a space underneath where you can put your shopping, and I always use that. And incidentally, I asked when we were replacing the car, what would be the best car to get, and I wanted a small car, and they advised which car to get. I shouldn't advertise, I suppose, but it's a kind that you can get both the back seats up. So instead of having to lift into the boot, and because of my back, I mustn't lift heavy things, you can almost tip it in across the space at the back behind the 2 front seats. And so that was very good advice. So yes, I use the walking frame. The wheels are wearing out, I think, because I use
And is there anything you found it difficult to get hold of? Anything you've wanted and you've not been able to find? Or
no, I haven't. I've been very lucky. Yes, I did send off when I broke my elbow. If you break your elbow and you're all plastered up, you obviously can't get it wet, so you have the shower problem. And I sent off for a very clever bag. You put your whole arm in this bag, and it has a sort of thing round the top, which is sort of elasticates something, and it keeps it snugly tight at the top. But by the time I got it back, the plaster had come off because it took so long to get. That's the only thing.
Oh, that's annoying. And have you got any sort of items that aren't necessarily gadgets or aids, but you know, just general things that you thought, this is marvelous, this has been really useful?
Well, where should we start? As far as pain goes, I find the best thing is to have people around for coffee. Distraction is the best painkiller I've found. With vertebrae fractures are very painful and it lasts a long time. Electric heat pad, which is like a mini electric blanket from Boots, not very expensive. On the back, I don't fancy frozen peas, which is the other thing. Cold is meant to be good for pain, but not for me. So I value this heat pad. And the cot duvet comes in useful because wherever you're sitting, you can fold it. It's a small duvet, obviously. You can fold it into different shapes to relieve the discomfort. Shall I go on about my vertebrae fractures pain? Because I have found that my back, although the vertebrae pain is almost gone, it sometimes aches a bit, to protect myself from getting any more, because I have a fragile back and I'm a bit skinny, so it sticks out a bit. Right? When I'm sitting on a hard pew, inevitable in most churches, I always sit in the corner, because if your spine is in the corner, it doesn't actually touch the back. So for sensitive vertebrae, I recommend sitting in the corner in hard pews, because if you sit back suddenly on a bit of wood, I have done it once, you can fracture. My back has shrunk a lot. I mean, I've shrunk 6 inches. Well, if you think about it, it's not in your legs mainly, it's your back. So you've got a short back. So you look very tall, or fairly tall, not as tall as I was. And then you sit down and you're rather short and you can't see over the head. So in the cinema, I take a thick cushion and sit at the back. And then if you sit further down, people don't like to see you sitting on a high cushion. It's like if you wear a large hat, it's not popular. So we sit at the back. And also, when I go to the hairdressers, I always sit on a child's booster seat in order to get my head up to the basin. What shall I talk about next? Somebody gave me...
Can I ask, do you ever find going to the dentist, you know, being in a dentist chair or anything like that, is that something that poses a problem?
It is a bit uncomfortable. I don't ever bother to take a cushion with me, but it's not a hard seat, but lying back on it is not comfortable. I always ask him to put the headrest up because I'm bent. I tend to, if I sit on it as he's got it, my head is tipped back, so I always ask him to put the headrest up. Otherwise, it's fine.
Yeah, we do get asked that quite a lot, so that's useful to know that people can ask maybe to adjust the settings of the seat itself to help a bit.
Yeah. Yes. Another thing about elbow fractures, which is a temporary thing, is that I couldn't get my vest on and it got colder and colder. Now this was very annoying. So what I bought was a waistcoat. I've got it on now. Very cheap acrylic waistcoat. I bought 2 of them, which of course buttons down the front, which did very well. And I didn't wear it underneath, but on top, and it meant that I didn't feel so cold without a vest. Another thing I've found useful is a bath cushion. I expect Jackie knows about those. I forget the name of the firm now, but you have this cushion which blows up with a motor into a big cube. So you blow it up, and then till the top comes level with the bath. And then you sit on it, and then you let the air out, and you don't need to let it right down to the bottom, so that you're lying on a bit of a cushion. And then when you want to get out of the bath, you blow it up again, and then you can get out. So that's a very good, you would call that a gadget.
That's really useful.
I also
Any?
can
Yeah, carry on.
recommend
Carry on.
a big fat cushion, which is a double one, so that it's like two fat cushions with a join. I got it off, Googled it. I did give a magazine, a picture into the magazine once, which they printed. And so you can either make a double height cushion, or you can use it both to sit on to raise the seat and to have as a nice, comfortable back. So that was another fairly cheap thing, which I found very, very useful.
Absolutely.
Use it a lot. I also, when I was in one of the houses we were in, I found I could erect a pulley over the stair rail, so that when you want to get things down from upstairs, you can drop them down over the rail on a pulley. So that was a useful thing. But this house, unfortunately, we can't do that. I go along with Jackie about long-handled grabbers, picking the post up off the mat, because bending down, if you have a sensitive back, is not comfortable. Yes. What else have I? Oh yes, one thing that people don't like to mention is the leaking problem, because my golden rule, which I have in my head almost always when I'm moving around, is you must not hurry. It's better to get there late than to have a fracture. So, for example, going to the loo, you suddenly realise you've got to go to the loo, and you hurry, and that's dangerous. So I do wear pads, quite small ones, so that particularly at night, you wake up. If you're in a hurry, you're a bit shaky if you've just been asleep. So you can get pads quite cheaply from Boots, incontinence pads, and they have them all different sizes. And I do recommend that, because then you always know that you don't need to hurry. You're protected. Yeah. And it's the sort of thing that people don't like to talk about, but I think it is important to have means whereby you don't ever need to hurry.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, and another thing about elbow fractures, I borrowed my husband's pajamas, because most night dresses go over the head. So pajamas are actually much better. So if they've got buttons down the front, which men's pajamas tend to have, and they've also got, they're nice and roomy, so there's plenty of room for the plaster underneath.
That's a great tip.
It is, yeah, thinking out of the box there. Oh, that's brilliant.
I'm just wondering if there's anything else that I've found useful. I think, when I had March fractures, that's when you have fractures in your feet. Walking boots are great. I wore walking boots even to teach at one stage, because I had broken the long bones in my foot, and there's no plastering you can do for that. And fortunately at that time, the girls tended to be wearing Doc Martin boots, so I was quite, well, not quite fashionable, but didn't look good. And the other thing about boots is getting those. I almost, now I'm older, I tend not to go out in the snow, and you can shop online and all the rest of it, but you can get those things with spikes that you can either put over your own shoes, or I had some wonderful boots where it was incorporated into the underneath. You could turn the spiky bit in so that all the spikes were in the grooves if you didn't want to have spikes, or if it was slippery, you could then reverse it and turn the spikes over so that you've got spiked boots. But you can, more accessible is you can actually get spikes that go over your own shoes, because going out in slippery weather is very dangerous.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
We learn an awful lot from our clients and our patients.
Well, we learn a lot from them, even more. Yes, even more.
And how about other tips in general aside from gadgets? Do you find, Philippa, that you get better, you're better doing things if you pace yourself, if you think about the task that you're doing and maybe build in time to do things more slowly and perhaps have a rest. Is that the sort of tactics you employ?
Well, I
help you?
try and leave plenty of time. Now, one thing that's not a gadget, if you've got the money and the sort of a kitchen which you can adapt, somebody suggested to me the other day that her mother had getting into the back of low cupboards in the kitchen. I can't do it. I wait till our children come and they can get the things at the back out. But she suggested for her mother converting all these low cupboards into drawers, because then of course you can pull the drawers out. That would be very useful. I mean, we haven't got, we haven't done that, but I can see that it would. I just keep things at the back that I hardly ever use, and everything I do use is at the front. And of course I use a stool with great care, so that I'm always holding on to something to get to the high shelves if I need to. I try and avoid it.
Yeah.
But the great thing is to say to yourself, whenever you're doing something, or have it in the back of your mind, it is better not to do it slowly, whatever, than actually to fall and have a fracture. Think about the last time I had a fracture and what a trouble it was to me and everybody else. Better not to do it, or better not to hurry.
Yeah, or best to wait for help. Yeah, if you're ever unsure, stop.
I will never stand on a chair and change a light bulb. It's better to sit in the dark and wait for the neighbour to come home,
Yeah, I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, so do I.
Well, that's a fantastic amount of really useful information. Goodness me. Jackie, have you got anything that you want to sort of add on the back of everything that Philippa has said, or?
No, I think it's always great listening to people talk about their experiences, and how quite often a very small gadget or change can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just asking the question, what sorts of things am I finding difficult? Is there an easier or safer way to do it? Let's have a look at there. And like you said earlier, more often than not, there is something that we can suggest or advise on, and it's just allowing people to do all those activities of daily living, as what we call them, or just to make it so much more easier to manage, and just those very small adaptations just make such a big difference.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. Well, amazing information. I feel like I've had a wealth of knowledge in the last half an hour. Hopefully that's going to be really useful to a lot of our viewers out there as well. So that's marvellous. Of course, we do have specific information and useful links on our website and below the video here for those of you watching online. We've got fact sheets specifically on daily living after fractures and on getting out and about, which cover a lot of, but not all, of the fantastic tips we've had here today. So do look those up if they're going to be useful. Also, if you're out there thinking that you could do with some help and some of these things sound useful to you, obviously, like Jackie said, talk to your healthcare team if you need some more guidance, and they can guide you on how to perhaps access anything. Or, of course, you can phone the helpline here and talk to the specialist nurses as well. So don't hesitate to get in touch. So I think all that's left to say now is thank you so much to the both of you. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Philippa, for giving your time and wealth of expertise today. It's been fantastic. And thank you so much to our audience for listening. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.